What up, grinders? I just got done opening a Magic the Gathering Foundation starter collection, and we're gonna find out if there really is everything you need to succeed within this box. What I'm gonna be doing is I'm going to open these 3 booster packs that came inside the box. I'm gonna use the contents of these packs and the cards that were provided within to try and make a standard deck that is good enough to win a standard FNM at my local game store. So let's open up these packs and see what we're working with. Okay, so Insanguinate could be good because there are a lot of life gain synergies within the box. I don't think Preposterous Proportions are going to be something we play with, but we will see. Okay, Time Stop's an interesting card. It's not the most cost-efficient way to take an extra turn, but could be useful. Okay, another life gain synergy card, Authority of the Consuls. That could be useful with all the life gain synergies that we already have. And Anthem of Champions could be a pretty powerful card if we end up going with a green-white aggro strategy. I don't know if there's a great amount of cards for that, but I guess we'll find out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort all the cards in here by color, and we'll just go from there because I'm not exactly sure what I'm working with. So, after organizing everything, I didn't take too much time to check things out, but from what I'm seeing, I'm going to first, break this down into a couple different deck strategies we could go with, and we'll go from there. A couple cards that seem very strong that I want to consider playing are Lyra Dawnbringer. The card's just a powerhouse. Authority of the Consuls is really strong in control strategies as well as life gain strategies and just to counter the aggro decks. We do have 4 copies of Opt, which would be nice to utilize that. Mono red strategies, or just red based aggro decks, are usually a pretty strong way to go, especially with like a limited card pool or a limited dollar pool. Like 4 burst lightnings are probably pretty strong, but from what I'm seeing, it doesn't look that promising, but I'll check it out. And then in green, we have 4 Llanowar Elves, and I mean, honestly, Llanowar Elves is one of the strongest cards that they could print in Standard, so that is definitely something I want to look at. There is also 2 Imperious Perfects, which is a Elf Lord, but it doesn't seem like there's too many Elves in our pool, so I don't know if it's going to be worth playing. It does create more Elves, so it's something worth looking at. Then there are a few strong multicolored cards, but we only have one copy of each, and there's only about like 3 for each color pair. And as far as lands go, none of the dual lands come into play untapped. There are, I think, 2 of each that heal you or gain you 1 life, which would be nice for the life gain strategy. And there's also 1 of each of the scry lands. So that makes me think if we're playing a multicolored deck, oh, and there's 1 of each guild gate. I don't think we can be doing mazes in stuff with only 1 of each guild gate. This makes me believe that if we're doing multicolored strategies, since all of our dual lands come into play tapped, we might want to look for a little bit of a slower play style. So I might be looking at a couple different control decks. Alright, so the first deck I'm kind of looking into is like a blue-white control deck. It's got some pretty solid removal from white. It's got the 2 stasis snares, it's got Fumigate, Valorous Stance, and the Authority of Consuls. And then we did get lucky enough to pull a Banishing Light from our play boosters. And then from blue we have Ops to, you know, just deck thin, get through our deck. We got counter spells like Negate and Essence Scatter, and Voracious Great Shark is another strong, you know, counter spell. It's got a body on it. And then Charming Prince is just a solid, well-rounded card. So is Inspiring Overseer. We have a few other cards that we can add in to try and round the deck out. So looking more into blue-white, we do have 2 of the Mischievous Mystics and 2 Clinquint Sky Mage. Both of those cards play off of drawing extra cards, so I added some Think Twice, Chart a Course, Spectral Sailor, kind of just like a tempo, more of a tempo deck than a control deck. We do need a way to win, so just having some small flyers, get points of damage in, might be the best thing we can do with that right now. A couple options I'm considering. I do have like Brineborn Cutthroats, which are pretty strong. Confiscate seems like a decent sideboard card. Lets me take control of any permanent. Arcanist seems kind of medium. This Finale's decent. Draw X cards. Harbinger seems good in a deck where I'd be playing the Brineborn. I'm just not sure if this strategy is quite the same as like a flash strategy, so I might need to look into a different color to combo with the Harbinger and Brineborn. Dictate could be a good card with all the draw card synergies. Sphinx the Final Word would be a good sideboard card for control mirrors. I am considering playing Mystical Teachings. Its flashback cost is a black, but there also aren't that great of instants to really search for. I do have like Time Stop, but other than that, it would mostly just be like removal. Having 2 Tolarian Terrors makes me think that there might be something that we should do with that. Only 1 came in the kit, but I opened a second one in the booster pack. I'm gonna pause on this deck and kind of check out a different option. So after longer consideration, when I was looking at the blue-eyed deck, the white seems good, but not quite good enough to merit playing blue, so I'm thinking that maybe a mono-blue tempo deck might just be the way to go. Lets me utilize the Tolarian Terrors. It also lets me utilize the Tempest Djinn, which is a really strong card, but only really works great in mono-blue decks. Playing mono blue also lets me utilize the Cutthroats a little bit better. I can focus on using cards on my opponent's turn. So I think this is a pretty strong option, but I'm gonna move away from blue and check out some other things. So I think the next archetype I want to look into is utilizing these 4 Llanowar elves. So let's see what we have to work with. So these are the elves that I found in my pool. We pulled the Beastkin Ranger from the play booster, and the rest of the ones came in the kit. I don't think it's quite enough to just play elves. Maybe I could combine it with some bigger creatures to go with it, but I know for sure we can't do anything that's pure elves. So one option would be to try and utilize the Gigantosaur. It is a 5 mana 10/10. It has no text, but it is a 5 mana 10/10. So I think I'm going to check out what mono green would look like. And since we're going to be mono green, I'm going to have to use a lot of the cards, so I think I'm going to use the elves and see what that looks like. So if we do look into mono green, we do have like the preposterous proportions card that could be fine if we're wider than our opponents. You know, it's gonna be hard to get to 7 mana without using the elves to create the mana, because we obviously want to attack with the elves. Overrun, you know, it's not really great nowadays, but it might be enough to get damage through. Primal Might's a really strong card, +X/+X, and then Fight. I think this is a decent strategy. The Predator Ooze is a really strong card. Whenever it attacks, it gets a counter, and then whenever a creature dealt damage by this creature dies, it gets another counter, and it is indestructible. It's a little slow, but it is a powerful card. And then by playing mono green, we can pretty confidently play, even with our terrible lands, we can play our Quake Strider Ceratops and our Gigantosaur, which are some huge creatures. Sirach also does quite a bit of work with those big creatures. It can give another creature haste as long as we have 8 power in play. We do get to utilize our elves in the early game, so honestly mono green might be a pretty good place to start. These monocolor decks seem really tempting because our mana base is just terrible. But let's check out a couple other options. So I almost forgot about our multicolor cards. So I think the next thing I'm going to look at here, since we already have the green laid out, is green-white. The Anthem we got might be pretty strong with all those elves. Wilt Leaf Liege can pump up all the elves, and Wilt Leaf Liege is also an elf itself. Unflinching Courage is a really strong card, and Dryad Militant's just a 1 mana 2/1, so if you're trying to be aggressive, that's a good pick. It'll probably go in the mono green deck also. So I'm looking at the white cards, and it looks like what we'd be doing is trying to go wide. White provides some good removal. It provides like Unflinching Courage and Anthem of Champions. And then it provides some big bombs at 5. Wilt Leaf Liege, we don't really need to play white cards to play that card. We could also play that in the mono white or mono green version. Mentor and Crusader are both pretty strong cards if we are going wide. When I'm going through a lot of the white cards though, a lot of it just makes me think like, if we're going to be playing these cards, we should probably just be playing it with black and really focus on the life gain bonuses that things have. Like a Johnny's Pridemate's really strong. So I'm thinking that if we're going to be playing green-white, it probably should just be mono-green. And so I'm going to check out a different color to pair with it. I'm looking at the red for the green, and I don't really think that the two colors are going to synergize that well together. Ruby Daring Tracker is a really strong card, and so is Helana and Elena. But ultimately, I don't feel like it adds enough to merit playing the second color, especially with how bad the mana base is. So I'm thinking at this point, if we're playing green, it might just be standalone green. The other colors don't really seem to synergize well enough with it. There's also blue-green, where I'll have Tatiova and Trigon Predator and Prime Speaker, but I just don't feel like it's enough to merit it. I think mono green would honestly be the strongest way to just approach the green decks. So I'm going to check out the next strategy, which will be life gain. Alright, so here are all the cards for a life gain strategy for playing black-white. I guess I also included like all the removal spells. That's the best part about playing black-white, I feel like. We have 3 Heroes Downfalls, Banishing Light, 2 Stasis Snares, and a Mortify. So the removal is really strong. Also, we have 2 Ajani's Pridemates and a Fiendish Panda, which are pretty strong payoffs for life gain, as well as Cat Collector. Whenever you gain life for the first time, you'll get a 1/1. Outside of that, we don't have too much payoff, unless I'm missing something for life gain. But we do have a lot of things that do gain life. Like we have the 4 Vengeful Blood Witches, which will drain every time one of my creatures dies. I guess Angel Vitality is another life gain payoff. It becomes a 4/4 once we have enough life. And then we have Marauding Blight Priest, which will drain whenever we gain life. But there's also kind of like an Aristocrats option with this black-white stuff. And that's whenever like you have effects whenever your creatures die, things happen. We have things like Infestation Sage. It's a 1/1. When it dies, we'll get a 1/1 flyer, which is nice. We have Ailey. If we're at 30 or more life, we can pay 3 mana to sacrifice another creature to exile target non-land permanent. Then we also have Vampiric Rites, which allows us to sacrifice a creature to gain a life and draw a card. So it kind of goes with both of those strategies of life gain and Aristocrats. And then ultimately we play in white, so we can play Lyra Dawnbringer, which is a really powerful card. Ultimately, I feel like this deck will fall a little short. Its best draws might be good enough to beat some of the decks down at the shop, but we pretty much need to go like Hinterland Sanctifier into Pridemate, or else I feel like this deck just isn't gonna do enough. It does have a lot of removal, but I think that other strategies can do it better. So maybe if we end up adding more cards to the pool, this might be something worth looking at again, but right now I just don't think it's enough. We're going to jump back into the blue strategy. I'm going to try it with red, since red hasn't really been able to look too great with any of the other color combinations. I do think the whole instants and sorceries matter thing will be the best with blue-red, especially having 2 Talarian Terrors. So I'm going to check that out real quick. Alright, so I laid out the red cards that would go into this kind of strategy. Crackling Cyclops might be good enough. I'm a little suspect on that. I'm going to reevaluate that once I lay out the blue cards. But Gutter Snipe and Enigma Drake are both pretty strong cards with the Spells Matter deck. We have 3 mana, deal 5, exile the card. We have strong removal with coming from red. And we also have like card cycle as well. We did open up a Heartfire Immolator, which has prowess, and then 2 more came in the sealed kit. Pyromancer is just a strong card. Dragon Fodder is creatures that are in the form of an instance and sorcery. And then Lava Runner is a pretty good card with a Spells Matter deck. And then Firebrand and Noble are just both solid cards and more aggressive strategies. So let's put the blue cards out there and see how it's looking. Alright, so after further consideration, I ended up cutting the Dragon Fodders and the Cyclops down here, because, there's a lot of 2-drops, so I don't think the Dragon Fodder really makes the cut. We have plenty of other spells. We have 4 Burst Lightning, 4 Opt. So we have plenty of instants and sorceries are going to be casting. I just kind of want more impactful creatures. Things like the Mystic and the Cutthroats, I feel like they'll put a lot of work in. I think the Mocking Sprites are better than the Cyclops. It's a flyer, so it'll be able to get damage in, and it'll reduce a lot of these cards to make them really powerful effects. So I think if we play a red strategy, this is kind of what I'm going to go with. I'm going to think about it a little longer, and try and come to a final decision. Alrighty, so I decided to play mono green tonight for my first FNM with this card pool. I was between a couple other decks, either a black-white control deck. I feel like that deck might struggle with other control decks. I'll just kind of go bigger. The other option was like a blue-red or mono-blue deck. I feel like mono-blue would struggle with the aggro decks, and the blue-red deck just wasn't quite powerful enough, so ultimately I went with mono-green. I think it's got a chance against everything, you know, if the cards line up well enough. I'm playing a couple suspect cards, like Preposterous Proportions, like Swift Boots, just a couple weird ones, Giant Growth, you know. It's a stompy deck. I'm just going to try and get in there, hopefully open up a Llanowar Elves, and stand by my statement that it's one of the more powerful cards that I have access to, and I have 4 of it. So I'm hoping that mono green will get the job done, but I guess we'll see. Also, they didn't provide me with enough basic lands, so I'm gonna have to add a few extra cards to the pool. They're just gonna be forests though, so that's something to know. If you are trying to pick up this kit and just play, you might need to grab a couple of basic lands if you're playing a monocolored deck, because I'm playing 23 forests. Also, here's my sideboard. It's mostly just the rest of the cards that I have access to. Few of them are pretty strong in certain matchups. You got a couple things that are good against control, some artifact, enchantment, destruction. This card's good against blue and black spells, I guess. And then Basilisk Caller's life gain. A couple other like niche cards, you know, got some more life gain. So, yeah, well, that's my 75, and we'll see how we do. I'm actually going to add 2 Rogue's Passages over 2 of the forests. I don't want to add too many non-green sources, because I'm using a lot of cards that require a lot of green, but I'm hoping that playing these won't cause any problems and maybe even sneak a win in. Alright, grinders. So, this is our first FNM with the MTG Foundations Starter Collection card pool. We are playing mono green, and yeah, this is round 1. My first round opponent, I did win the die roll, but my first round opponent, he was playing a blue-green Manifest Dread deck. Unfortunately, his TCG player order didn't arrive in time, so he ended up just buying a booster box of Dustmourne and then filling it out with some other Dustmourne cards. So we were kind of doing a similar thing where both of us had a pretty limited card pool. His card pool seemed a little bit more synergistic, though, since he was able to really play on the whole Manifest Dread thing and have a lot of cards that complemented each other, where mine was a little bit more just the strongest cards I could scrape together. In game 1, I was able to win the die roll, and it helped me put a good amount of pressure on my opponent. Finn actually did a good amount of work. I thought there was a chance I was actually going to be able to win through poison damage, but the removal he did have, he was able to keep Finn at bay, but ultimately I was able to get a lot of damage across, and then once we reached the later portion of the game, I was able to play a Steel Hellkite and equip it with some boots. And from there, Steel Hellkite just kind of took over. I was able to destroy like 2 to 3 cards every time it connected. And that kind of just put the nail in the coffin when I drew Sirach and was able to just push for game. Game 2 in my first match, I'm already getting punished by having that Rogue's Passage in my deck. I think if that was a Forest, I would have kept, and it would have been a pretty decent hand. You know, Llanowar Elves into Llanowar Elves is always strong. And then I mulligan, and would you look at that? 2 more Rogue's Passage. So, shipped one of those to the bottom. I ended up just getting pretty flooded game 2. His deck looked pretty good. He was getting all of his synergies off, and my deck was looking pretty bad. Alright, and then on to game 3. My opening hand looks a little loose. I don't really have any payoffs for my fast mana, but I feel like if I open up Llanowar Elves and my hand's not bad, I just kind of have to keep. I ended up drawing, some decent creatures, but my opponent had a Dissection Tool, and that card was putting in a lot of work and really pushing me in, and I kept fighting, and eventually my Vizier of the Menagerie was able to generate me a lot of card advantage. But unfortunately, since our decks aren't too powerful, our match took a really long time, and so we ended up going to turns, and we ended up going into a draw. I'm not sure if I would have won the match, but there were definitely going to be many more turns. Alright, on to round 2. I ended up losing the die roll. This opponent was playing an actual deck. They were playing Blue-White Oculus. It wasn't like a super competitive version of it. They're definitely missing some cards, but it is definitely a real standard deck. Fortunately for me, it is a bit of a feast or famine deck, so there's definitely a chance for me to beat something like this. I ended up having to mulligan. A lot of lands just keep coming. He's able to apply a good amount of pressure. I have a decent curve, at least I'm playing bodies, but with his creature becoming unblockable, he's able to, really put me on the back foot. My opponent did have a gold border, a Darkar Waste. Definitely let him know that those are not tournament legal, but I don't really care. It's FNM, I let him play with it. He bought it literally like before the tournament from the card shop that we were playing at, so I just let him know, you should probably let them know that you intended on using it in the tournament, and hopefully they were able to refund him and get him another copy if they had any. But yeah, this game 1, he played an Overlord and then reanimated the Oculus, so that was pretty much lights out from there. Going into game 2, my hand's pretty medium, but I ended up keeping it just because I have lands and spells. Maybe I should have mulliganed. I did have a removal spell for a flyer, so that was tempting in regards to keeping it. I was able to apply a good amount of pressure. He stumbled pretty hard, and so Sirach was able to, just put in a lot of work. He was able to exile the Sirach, but I do have the out to remove it. I couldn't do it immediately, but once I was able to untap, I had enough mana to pay the ward cost in order to get it back. And then the MVP of this deck, Steel Hellkite, comes down. Sirach's able to give a haste, and we're able to close the game out. Going into game 3, we do start one of our best openers. Obviously with Llanowar Elf and Imperious Perfect, it doesn't get much better than that. And then I also have, I'm spacing its name, but the 3 mana 3/3. Whenever you play a creature, it gets +1/+0, and it also has Trample. And so being able to play that on turn 2 it's pretty nice because, you know, I play 2 bodies back to back, and then Imperious Perfect pumps it up, so it's swinging for 6 damage on turn 3. So even though he's able to play the Oculus out, I'm able to just apply enough pressure, get the Gigantosaur down. I'm able to attack, even though he has, you know, quite a bit of bodies in play, uh, and get the trade off and chip in some damage. Remind him to get his Oculus trigger. Just, you know, it's FNM. If it was a competitive match, you know, I wouldn't mind letting him miss it. But we get in with the Gigantosaur. He is pretty much forced to chump block here, and we get to put Palaka Worm into play. And at this point, my opponent's down to 12 life. And fortunately, I top deck the Rogue's Passage, and I can give the Gigantosaur unblockable. And with how many bodies I have in play, since the Imperious Perfect is bannering the elves, I'm able to do lethal. Alright, it's round 3. I have 1 win and 1 draw. I'm pretty surprised that I had such a good start. But this round, I play against a mono black demon deck. It seems like my opponent might be missing a few cards, but after mulligan, my hand is unplayable. I see a 1-lander, you know, it's probably not worth keeping, so we send it back and keep a 5. Really wish I knew what I was playing against, because I might have kept one of those earlier hands since I had the Guilt Leaf. Since my opponent plays a lot of discard spells, the Guilt Leaf on a weaker hand might have been worth it. My opponent turn 1 plays a discard spell after I get down to 5 cards, so it's pretty rough. Fortunately, though, I'm able to draw my Guilt Leaf Liege. But my hand's still pretty weak. My opponent does play a discard spell on turn 2 that I'm able to decide what I discard, letting me put the Guilt Leaf Liege into play. So I thought maybe I had a chance, but he immediately go for the throated it. And, you know, I'm on a mold of 5 after a discard spell. He puts the Hashling Slasher into play. I'm able to get the Guilt Leaf back, but he's just got removal plus Slasher, so pretty much wraps up the game. And then, you know, we go into game 2. The hand's pretty medium, but I feel like with the Gigantosaur, like, maybe I just have to keep. My opponent's playing a discard deck, though, so, like, if he was able to take the Gigantosaur from my hand, I think my hand would have been pretty unplayable. But I'm feeling pretty good since he didn't. And then he plays the discard spell on turn 2. Thinks about it for a bit, but ultimately goes with the Gigantosaur under the bat. Drew another elf. Not really doing much. The game looks pretty doomed, but I keep playing. Like, maybe I can top deck out of it. Like, I can bite, get the Gigantosaur back, but ultimately my opponent has Aclazotz plus Slasher, so as soon as that Slasher connects, I'm gonna lose the game. Keep playing, you know, maybe a miracle happens. I'm able to play Gigantosaur in hopes to trade with the Slasher, but my opponent plays Blot out, taking the Gigantosaur out. Alright, so round 4, I'm playing against Deshaun. Shout out to Sean if you're watching. He's playing mono white control. Pretty scared of this matchup. Control's kind of like the last thing I wanted to go against playing my dirtily mono green deck. I have to mulligan my first hand. It's pretty jank, but I'm mulligan into elf, so or Llanowar elf, so I was feeling pretty good. Unfortunately, it has the get lost to take it out. I am able to get a pretty aggressive start though, to get you know, some elves into play, and then play the automaton, naming elves to pump them all up. I'm able to get a good amount of damage in. Deshaun chose not to destroy he flashes in a Virtue to make a 2/2, and then get lost the automaton. If he would have done that first, he would have been able to kill an elf and take a bit less damage. But it doesn't really matter. He untaps and jams Beza. Beza brings him back up to 16. He's able to get 2 fish into play, so this match is looking pretty bad, but there's still a chance. I'm able to draw Baloth, put that into play. If anything can really bring this game back, it would be Baloth, just making a bunch of dudes and maybe top decking an overrun. Unfortunately, he's able to play the Virtue side of it and start pumping up all of his guys, get rid of my Baloth, and then plays the second Virtue. And at that point, it's as good as over, but I think I did the math, and if I draw an overrun, then maybe I can deal enough damage. So I keep on playing it out. I draw the Quake Strider. I think that helps with the overrun math, but unfortunately draw Forest, and that ends the game there. Alright, going into game 2. My first hand's pretty good. It's got a Llanowar Elf in it, so it's hard to say no. Play that out, and then I got my awesome sideboard card, my 2-mana 2/1 Elf. Able to play Imperious Perfect out. It'll be helpful because I can, create tokens and kind of go wide while also pumping up my other creatures to apply pressure. Really just trying to get as much damage in as I can, because I feel like a lot of the games is just going to come down to if I can maybe top deck and overrun. Keep making elves and just applying pressure, and fortunately I'm able to get the game. I forgot to play Grook's Uprising before I attacked, so I would have been able to get 2 more points of damage to put him to 1, but it didn't really matter. Alright, and then on to game 3, the last game of the night, and it's a mulligan. So I gotta send that back, can't keep that 1-lander. And the next hand's pretty decent, we have the elf into the 3-drop that grows. Toss back the Hero's Bane. There's definitely a chance. Top deck Imperious Perfect. Just gonna do that strong opener that I have. Play the Imperious Perfect and, just get some damage in. He attacks with the 1/1. I thought about it for a while why he was doing that. I take the block, but I should have known it was pretty obvious. He has Beza, and so maybe I should have just taken that 1 point, but ultimately it's difference between 1/1/1 and 2/1/1s. This game starts looking pretty bad for me, and unfortunately my camera storage filled up. I didn't really look into that before I started recording, so I was not able to record the rest of this game, but ultimately I'm fighting the good fight, but I'm pretty buried already at this point, and Deshaun ends up winning the last game. Thanks for watching, y'all. It was fun playing an FNM for the first time in a while. If you're enjoying this series, make sure to subscribe and keep watching them, and if you like this video, please drop a like. And make sure to check out the next one, where we'll be opening 3 more packs of Magic Foundations and adding it to this card pool.